Sell your daughter for 5 horses and almost throw your disabled son off a cliff because we have the most badass show about barbarians since...
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
Netflix's Barbarians is based off the true story of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD, in which the vastly outnumbered Germanic tribes defeated the Romans. So in this video, we're going to be going back in time, taking a deep dive into history, and explaining some of the show's hidden details and what it could mean for Season 2. But before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, as I'm always coming out with new videos. The last episode starts with a betrayal. Segestus, a former Reich, or leader of the German Cheruscan tribe, has figured out that Gaius Julius Arminius, a prefect of the Roman cavalry and adopted son of the Roman governor, is planning to betray the Roman army and lure them into a trap. You see, Arminius and his brother were taken from their family as young boys and raised by Varus as Romans. They were considered a peace offering between the Germanic peoples and the Romans, and it's when he arrives back in Germania he becomes a man trapped between two worlds. Does he side with the barbarians, his blood, or the Romans, the ones who raised him?
Auf welcher Seite stehst du, Ari?
And it's this struggle that weighs on him throughout the series, ultimately siding with the barbarians after witnessing the innumerable atrocities committed by the Romans. These include taking away the tribe's last remaining food, murder, and crucifixion. While these are terrible acts, it's also Arminius' lack of freedom that spurs him to change sides. It's this theme of freedom versus destiny that drives at the core of Barbarians. Arminius' entire life has been controlled by others, specifically his adopted father, Governor Varus, who even makes him the Reich of the Cherusci in an effort to solidify Roman hold in the region.
Barbara stirpe natus es. Locus tuus est hic, in Germania. Hic poteris Romam quam optime navare.
Arminius has been nothing but a pawn of Rome his entire life. His job as a soldier is literally to follow orders. He has no autonomy. In this way, he can empathize with the barbarians. Both are subject to the will of others, both have no freedom. In a bit of irony, Varus says to Arminius,
Maxima viri gloria costat, ex fine sua statuenda.
But Arminius can't choose his own end, it's chosen for him, unless he takes matters into his own hands, joins the barbarians, and fights for freedom. This line about being able to choose your own end also foreshadows Varus's death. He chooses his own end by taking his life, something that actually happened when he realized he lost the battle. I also want to take a moment to mention Arminius' brother, Flavus. The show kinda glosses over what happened to him, but if we follow history, he'll play a major role in upcoming seasons. Unlike Arminius, Flavus was loyal to the Romans, fighting alongside the great Roman general Germanicus, not to be confused with the Germanic tribes, against his own brother at the Battle of Weser River, a battle that was sparked after Arminius found out his wife and child were captured by the Romans. So this could mean next season we see Thusnelda getting captured with their child, or should I say Fulquin's child, and we'll get into that a bit later in the video. So back to the main story. Segestus exposing Arminius as a traitor was motivated by his lust for power. Arminius had taken away his daughter and his role as Reich. If he could prove his loyalty to Varus, he could have both of these things back, even if it comes at the betrayal of his own people. But Arminius is smart and confesses, telling Varus that it's true. He plans to take on the giant Roman army of 15,000 men with a small group of 500 warriors, and that the real Fulquin, the person he was supposed to kill a few episodes ago, is working as a slave in the Roman camp. It's a story that's so outlandish, Varus can't help but to laugh. And this really ties into Rome's greatest weakness, the belief that they're invincible.
Ja, sie halten sich für unbesiegbar, aber genau das ist ihre Schwäche.
Although they are outnumbered, Arminius plans to exploit this belief of invincibility by splitting the army up in the forest and launching an ambush. Think of it as a giant snake hacked into smaller, more manageable parts. But the peace between the Germanic tribes is frail. Before the battle is to take place, Hadgan, Reich of the Chattan, bows out after Thusnilda denies him. She was promised to him by Segestus as his bride to unite their tribes, but he's a piece of shit and Thusnilda is now married to Arminius. Arminius, a marriage that started as one of convenience, a way for Arminius to gain the trust of the tribe since he's still considered a Roman outsider. With Hadrian's men no longer in the fight, the other Reichs bow out, but it's up to Thusnelda, who they believe is a seer handpicked by the gods, to rally them. For much of the season, Thusnelda has had a strange relationship with the gods, often calling on them for help and sacrificing her blood in the process. She claims to have dreams which predict the future, and she tells the men that she's seen the outcome of the battle, a glorious victory over the Romans. But to really prove to the men she means business, she cuts her eye, sacrificing it like their god Wotan did to his own eye to see the future. Now, it's never really explained whether her eyesight in this eye is gone for good. She wears an eye patch during the battle, but later when talking to Arminius, she says she's fine. So we'll have to put a pin in that one for now. This idea of sacrificing to the gods has major implications for next season, as Fulkwin promises his firstborn child in exchange for the power to defeat Varus. In one of the biggest reveals of the episode, Runa, the Oracle, tells Thusnelda that she's been with child for some time and the father isn't who she thinks it is, meaning the father is likely Fulkwin and not her husband, Arminius. And with Fulkwin having promised his firstborn child, things could get really messy. The first part of the battle begins in the forest, where the stretched out Romans are easily picked apart and separated by falling trees. Arminius takes off his helmet, showing his barbarian war paint, and for a brief moment he is reunited with Thusnelda. He doesn't tell her that her true love, Fulkwin, is still alive, having been captured as a slave by the Romans, but that will come into play a bit later on. The Romans retreat back into the open, where the barbarians have prepared a trap of flames, separating them further. And from this point, it's a massacre, as the Romans are caught off guard and picked off one by one. I should also mention Segestus' alliance with Hadrian, offering him his daughter should the Romans be victorious, and Segestus himself will become the new Reich. They end up joining the battle later on when it's clear the barbarians will win, but the show is really setting up new rivalries and alliances for next season. You may have also noticed Ansgar, Thusnelda's disabled brother, in the middle of the battle. Earlier in the season, Runa said that Ansgar was spared because the gods still have a plan for him, insinuating that his presence on the battlefield is somehow linked to the rain. This rain made it much more difficult for the Roman soldiers to fight in the mud due to their heavy armor in comparison to the lightly armored barbarians. It's a similar strategy the English incorporated against the French in the Battle of Agincourt, and if you haven't checked out my video on the king, you totally should. Varus, seeing as he's led his men to their own deaths, a result of his hubris, kills himself ironically with Arminius' knighthood sword, which was given to him in part because of his loyalty. I'm not sure if they were trying to make him more sympathetic here, but right before he does, he frees his slave Pelagios. It's also kind of ironic that Varus spent much of the season putting other people's heads on spikes and ends up on one himself. With the Romans defeated and the barbarians victorious, Thusnelda and Arminius reunite. She understands what Arminius must be going through and how his father used him.
Hat dich nur benutzt. Du willst die Liebe deines Vaters so sehr, dass du alles glaubst und alles tust.
And believe it or not, Thusnelda isn't too upset that Arminius didn't tell her about Fulkwin. This is largely in part because she's fallen in love with Arminius. She will continue to be his queen. She'll later talk to Fulkwin, who says to come to her once she's made her decision on who to be with, but it's clear she's already made up her mind. Thusnelda, Fulkwin, and Arminius used to be great childhood friends, but this relationship has changed everything. When Arminius asks Fulkwin to be his first lord, Fulkwin responds,
Dann bin ich der Erste, den ich töte.
Thusnelda sees her father Segestus, but doesn't say a word with him. It's her chat with Runa and the discovery of her baby that really set things up for season 2. She believes this child, especially that it's not Arminius's, could be punishment from the gods. Thusnelda has lied about her dreams, the ones supposedly given to her by the gods, in order to sway her people to her will, and the gods might not think too kindly to that. Ari is visited by a wolf, something he's been visited by countless times over the season. In fact, the first episode is called The Eagle and the Wolf. The symbolism here is open to interpretation, much like how it's described in the show. The barbarians believe wolves symbolize destruction, while the Romans believe the wolf symbolizes life and creation, as it was a wolf that saved Romulus and Remus as young boys, the eventual founders of Rome. So it's really up to us whether we want to interpret this as a hopeful sign or a deathly omen. Finally, we have the last scene of the season, which sees a cloaked figure taking Varus's head past the corpses of of the defeated Roman army. The important thing here is not so much who this cloaked figure is, but where they're going. My guess is Rome, to pass on the news of what was, at the time, Rome's most catastrophic defeat. The Romans would eventually send one of its greatest generals, Germanicus, adopted son of Emperor Tiberius, to take on Arminius, and it's kind of interesting that both these leaders were adopted as children. As I said earlier, if there's a season 2, it will likely pit Arminius against his own brother, who fights alongside Germanicus. This results in the Battle of Weser River, a huge defeat for the Germanic tribes, and one in which Arminius is severely wounded but evades capture. But I want to hear what you thought about Barbarians. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and for more bad takes, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.